Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. We have a really outstanding program for you tonight, and our special guest is Kitty Werthman. And Kitty has a really unbelievable story to tell. Are you there, Kitty?
Yes, I am.
She's on the phone right here, and she's going to tell us. Kitty, tell us a little bit about yourself and what the program is all about.
Well, I'm a survivor of Hitler's brutal regime. I lived under Hitler's regime for 7 years.
7 years?
World War II, 3 years under communist occupation. I came to the United States in 1950, and later I became a proud and grateful American citizen.
Well, now, you know, there's a lot going on in the United States right now, and I think that you can shed some light on what's going on in the United States now. If you care to, could you tell us a little bit about how Hitler took power in, I believe it was Austria, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
Well, it was in 1938, and Austria was in a very deep depression. The economy was literally on the ground. We had more than 30% unemployment, and people were starving. Nobody had any money, no jobs, and people were going from house to house begging for food, and it was very desperate. Farmers were going bankrupt. They didn't have the money to pay the mortgage or the taxes, and the banks were charging 25% interest. So a lot of farms and businesses were going bankrupt. And the state of, in the cities, well, everywhere in Austria, there were riots and demonstrations. The unions were calling for strikes and burning down. Two political parties were fighting each other. On one side, the Communist Party, who was getting very powerful, and on the other side, Hitler's party, the National Socialist Party, and they were fighting each other, and there was chaos. It was just like a huge mob, and the police could not control it. So the Austrian people were getting very desperate, and they called to the government for an election. And of course, we heard Hitler speaking all the time on the radio that in Germany, where Hitler ruled since 1933, and they had full employment, they had law and order, and they had a high living standard. And there was not a whisper that anybody was being arrested or whatever. And we only heard all the good things, and Hitler talked like an American politician. He promised us everything. He said he would give every farmer back his farm, and every business owner would get their business back, because the banks were such usurpers, charging 25% interest. So he said if we would vote for him, that all would be turning out, everything would turn out good, just like the people lived in Germany. So we had an election, and 98% of the population voted for Hitler. sure enough, Hitler promised what he said. He gave the farms back. He gave back the business peoples their property. And he fed all the hungry people. And law and order was just like a miracle. Everything fell into place. Everything turned out for the good, we thought. First thing he did, he gave us free radios. Free radios. So we could listen to him. And then he nationalized the radio stations, owned and operated by the government. But we were told that if we would listen to a foreign radio station, British Broadcasting or Switzerland, there was death penalty on there. You were an enemy of the state if you listened to a foreign radio station. So nobody listened to a foreign radio station because we know what would happen if you would listen to BBC. So the next thing what happened, he nationalized our banks. He said all those bad banks, they need to be regulated by the government, that they don't charge 25% interest. They were usurpers. Then things happened very fast. Nobody was elected anymore. Everybody from the school board to the legislature, county commission, governors were being appointed. We thought, well, since the government was running so good and so well in Germany, we would enjoy the same thing. We did not ask any questions. Next thing what happened, he nationalized education. And that literally happened overnight. Austria had very good schools, public schools, and we prayed in public school. We also had religion taught in public school. That morning, I walked into my classroom. I was in 6th grade. I was 12 years old. The crucifix was gone, and there was Hitler's picture and the Nazi flag on each side. And the teacher told us, if today we don't pray anymore, and we will sing Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, Germany above everybody, and we would not have religious instruction anymore either. We would have physical education instead. And we were told that on Sunday there would be National Youth Day, and it would be compulsory that we attend at 8 o'clock in the morning instead of going to church. And just in case our parents would not send us, the first time they would get a stiff letter of warning. And the second time we didn't show up, they would have to pay a heavy fine. And the third time we didn't show up, our parents would be arrested. Well, anyhow, we showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning to school. The first 2 hours we had political education. Today, I would call it political indoctrination. We were being told that our parents were old-fashioned old fogies. They did not understand the young people. And so we should not listen to our parents anymore, only to Hitler. Hitler had the best interest in us. We were the future of the country. So, literally what they did, they drove a wedge between us children and our parents. We argued with our parents all the time, and we were told that we had rights and we had freedom. That's why our parents couldn't tell us when to come home, and we could do whatever we want to. And the rest of the Sunday we had sports. We got free sports equipment, we got tennis rackets, we got skis, we got everything. The Boy got, at age 16, they got motorcycles. And we had lots of fun. Oh, lots of fun. A lot more fun than going to church. Well, as all this was going on, my parents got very concerned. And so when the next school term came around in October, my mother announced that she was taking me out of that horrible public school, and she was going to take me, she was going to put me into a private school with an excellent curriculum, but not much fun.
Huh?
And yes, she packed me off, and as we arrived at the new school, there was a huge wall around, an 8-foot wall, and a locked iron gate. And as I bid my mother goodbye at the gate, I almost hated her. I thought she was going to put me in prison. But she was a very wise woman, a very good Christian woman, and she said, today you don't understand why I'm doing this for you. But you will grow up and you will realize why I am doing this. Well, today I realize what my mother did for me. She saved me from that godless humanism which was taught in our public school. Had she not intervened, today I would be a radical Marxist. So that was education. At holidays, I could go back home, and of course I immediately went back to my former classmates and wanted to find out what really was going on. As I saw things I sure did not like. 16-year-old girls were being pregnant and having a baby for Hitler. And that was so glorified. And the whole thing, a very, very open lifestyle. Everything, the young people could do whatever they want to, regardless. Just a very loose lifestyle. So the next thing what happened, Austria had an excellent healthcare system.
Huh.
We had good doctors, we had good hospitals, and everybody, was insured privately. Everything worked well. This all was changing very fast because healthcare was going to be free for everybody. So everybody could go to the doctor for everything and anything. My brother-in-law was a family physician, and he told me that when he would go to his office at 8 o'clock in the morning, 40 patients would be sitting and waiting for him. He said it was like practicing medicine on a conveyor belt. He could not spend sufficient time with each patient because of the masses coming to see him. And of course, all the research stopped, and the hospitals were being filled up with hypochondriacs because it was free. And people very much misused the whole system. So many doctors left the country because all the doctors were being salaried by the government. No free market. Many doctors left for other countries, including my own husband. And I remember my husband saying when he came to America, how wonderful our hospitals are, how modern everything is, and how wonderful people are being cared for with the newest medicine and everything. And he said, I hope to God it will never change. Oh yes, it will change. Obamacare is here. And I hope and pray that the Supreme Court will rule the right way and overthrow Obamacare. It would not be good medicine at at all.
Okay, Kitty, can I ask you a question? I remember hearing this before, and the other thing that I was real impressed was that Hitler instituted gun control too. Is that right?
Oh, yes. That came later. That came later. We had other things what were happening very fast. We had a federal police force, commonly known as the Gestapo, and they were everywhere and watching everybody. They were in civilian clothes, and we didn't know who they were, but it was very interesting how they operated. Now, by that time, we had all our food rationed. You know, under socialism, things are becoming very scarce because production is being stymied.
Well, how long did it take? You know, when you said when they first came in, you had plenty of food, and now that something happened and they had to start rationing food.
Well,
How long
the
a
war
period?
started in 1939. The war started, you know, first with Poland and then with France. So all our food was being rationed, and of course, the farmers who were producing the food, they were extremely regulated by a food bank, and all the bureaucrats would go out on the farms and count the livestock and measure out the fields, that telling the farmers what they had to plant and how much they had to harvest regardless of the weather. They even counted the chickens and told the chickens how many eggs they had to lay. We had bureaucrats just by the tons all over the place. Here in America, we have the SARS in the White House, 42 of them. So the bureaucrats had the same functions as the SARS have in the White House, making all the rules and regulation. That's socialism, rules and regulation. Then when the food all was being rationed, then we got 1 pound of sugar a month. And if somebody passed away, like grandma in your family, so you immediately took the ration card for the sugar, the 1 pound, and went to the grocery store and bought that pound of sugar. The next day, the Gestapo would look on your door. That's the federal police, the secret police, and say, well, we know that you bought that pound of sugar, but we are not going to arrest you. You have to inform on your neighbor, your boss, your family, your relatives, your friends, everybody you know, how they feel about Hitler and his politics. And you report once a week to our office. And if you don't do that, then we will arrest you. Well, that way they created a massive network of informers. We couldn't trust the mailman. We couldn't trust the neighbor. We couldn't trust anybody who come into our house because we didn't know if they were informers. I remember, I think it was in '09, here in Pierre, I am a lobbyist. One morning I drove to the Capitol and I had my car radio on, and it was President Obama talking, and he said, anybody who criticizes me, you report to the White House.
Wow.
I almost smashed into a car ahead of me because I was so startled. I thought, is this happened here already? That we have informers calling the White House?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, Kitty, can I ask you a couple of questions? You've said so many things. Let me just inform our audience that this is Kitty Werthman in South Dakota. Is that right?
Yes.
and she was in Austria when Hitler was voted in, and she's telling us how this all happened. And as she goes, I'm thinking to myself, this sounds a lot like some of the things that are happening in America today. For example, you talked about the gun control, how Hitler instituted gun control and then tried to confiscate all the guns. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they also nationalized education so that they could control what the next generation was learning. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
And they took prayer out of
Yes.
the public schools. See, all of that has happened in America today. Did they change some of the names of the holidays like Christmas and Easter?
Since Austria was predominantly Catholic, they did not do that, but what they did, they regulated that, like on Catholic holidays, we had processions, outside on public property. They stopped all that. The only thing you had, what you did, in your church, as long as you were in your church, they left you alone. But you could not have any procession of religion, Catholic, on Catholic holidays, nothing. They stopped all that.
Okay, so they would try to keep religion isolated into the churches and not let religious ideas out into the community.
No, absolutely not.
And then you said they tried to get the youth. They had National Youth Day, and they tried to get the youth out of church and out of the Sunday schools and into these National Youth Days. Is that right?
That's right. That's why, let's see, it's now 5 generations grew up in Austria without God, without religion, and the churches are visibly empty except for the tourists.
Really? And then you said they tried to drive a wedge between the parents and the children,
That's right.
saying, oh, the parents are old-fashioned and they don't understand the new generation and the new way of doing things. It seems to me that that is happening in America today, too.
Yes, it is happening. That's why a lot of parents take their children out of public schools and homeschool them.
Yes. And then the other thing you mentioned that rang a bell with me was the idea that a tremendous emphasis on sports.
Oh, athletic was everything. As a matter of fact, Hitler wrote a book, My Struggle, Mein Kampf, but very few people read it because everybody was busy in athletics. All the athletic events, that was the big idea. Growing up healthy, strong, everybody was participating in sports. That was actually the new religion.
The new religion, sports almost became like a religion.
Yes, yes.
Then you said there seemed to be, when the children went to school, it was a nationalized school, a government school, and then morality seemed to become less important. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you had no religious influence. And we were being even asked in school if we had to pray at home and what our parents were talking about politically. The teachers would question us. And if in some families, if they were really, really antagonistic against Hitler, then the state would take the children away and put them into other families who were politically correct.
Oh, my. Okay, and then the other thing, of course, was the national health care, or what we would call here in America, Obamacare.
Total disaster, and still is in Austria today. That's why many doctors left the country because they did not want to practice under the government, their medical practice.
Really? Now, was your husband a physician too?
Yes.
So, and he found firsthand how the socialized medicine really did not work out well, that there were so many patients and not enough doctors. And
Doctors were very overworked, and of course they were salaried by the government. And my brother-in-law told me this is how it worked. My brother-in-law was a very conscientious doctor.
yes,
He would only prescribe to a patient what he really needed on medication. And if that medication was not on the government's list, then the government took it out of his salary. And his salary dwindled down to almost nothing.
really, because he wanted to prescribe the best medicine, and the government didn't want to pay for the good medicine, I guess.
Right. Only what the government had on the list, what the bureaucrats decided, you know. I mean, the bureaucrats weren't doctors, but they decided what kind of medication a doctor had to give to their patient.
Really?
Yep.
And then after the government kind of grew and took over everything, you actually had food rationing during...
We had all the food rationed, everything. We had very, very little. 1 pound of meat a month.
1 pound of meat.
And of course, dictatorship did not happen overnight. It took 5 years, from 1938 until 1943, to become a complete dictatorship. No more freedom of speech. And the last thing what happened was gun registration, because the government told us that guns were so unsafe.
Yeah.
Hunting accidents happened. Children were getting injured by guns, playing with guns, and we had criminals again.
Kitty, we're running out of time, but I just want to tell our audience here that they can get a copy of this program if they'll call our phone number, which is 893-2444. 893-2444. Call, and you can get the whole program of Kitty Werthman and how she experienced what happened when Hitler took over her country. Kitty, thank you very much. We're out of time, but we certainly appreciate your help on all of this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.